a lot of people think, oh, once I get this, I'll be happy. Once I had this amount of money, I'll be happy. Once I buy this car, I'll be happy. And really fast, really quickly, I saw and understood that wasn't the case, right? I got the car that I wanted. I'm like, okay, boom, like now I'm gonna be happy forever, right? After a few weeks, it's like, I mean, okay, like, yeah, I got it, but now what, you know? And then you start buying things, and it's like, everything might give me happiness for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not giving me fulfillment, right? So then you're like, okay, so what is it that really makes me happy, you know? And that forced me to dig deep within myself, like, and God, like, okay, what is it? And in reality, it was what I truly knew all along, which was family and friends, you know, spending time with them, making sure that they're good, like, right? Because football can leave at any moment, but my family and friends, you know, that I have will never leave.
Turn on the lamp, I don't go postal till God give it stamp. We going global, I'm in with the champs. I sit at the Oval, they told me I can't,
Welcome to Turn on the Lamp podcast, the podcast that brightens your day and illuminates the path to a more enlightened life. I'm your host, Devin Lamp, and in each episode, we'll explore stories, insights, and conversations that bring light to the darkness, helping you navigate life's journey with clarity and inspiration. Just like turning on a lamp in a dim room, our goal is to cast light on topics that matter, whether it's personal growth, spirituality, or the everyday challenges we all face. We all can learn from each other's testimony to find a cozy spot as we prepare to illuminate your world one episode at a time. Welcome to Turn on the Lamp podcast, episode 2, season 2. I'm your host, Devin Lamp. This guest I have today, man, y'all are in for a special treat. He's a University of Tulsa graduate. He helped charter the Black Men's Initiative program at the University of Tulsa. He was a guest speaker in Austin, Texas at the annual Black Student Athlete Summit. He has given back multiple scholarships to his hometown, McKinney, Texas, specifically at McKinney High School. The Akayleb Evans Foundation is a nonprofit that has helped give back to local communities and families in Texas. He was a Reese's Senior Bowl invite, as well as an NFL Combine participant, 4th-round draft pick, and starting cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings. Welcome, my guy.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. You know, we go back to the college days, you know, being roommates. And it's great to see what you got going on here with the Turn on the Lamp podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Appreciate you, bro. It's an honor. So what does your offseason look like nowadays? I know you're going into year 3, so it's obviously a different approach than when you came in as a rookie. Is there anything specifically that you're focusing on now that you're going throughout your years in the league?
Yeah, so I'll start from, you know, how I've done it before to this offseason and how it's different. Typically, when the offseason comes around, you know, most people that know me, it's hard for me to sit down, right? I get straight to it. I get straight to working out. But, you know, my approach this year was different, right? Take some time to myself, right? Get some relaxation in, because a lot of guys, you know, we're seasons long, right? So I was able to do that, relax a little bit, and then once I started working out, do things that was specific to me, right? Like, what does Akayleb need to work on? What's gonna separate me from the next man in the room, right? And, you know, for me, I've always been lift, but like I had to, you know, field work, right? Learning the game, watching film. I incorporated that this offseason, so that's been a difference for me.
So you talked about your specific approach to kind of focusing on the details now that you're going on in your years throughout the league. So what does that look like? When you talk about field work, is that a specific drill that you're doing over and over to kind of grasp the concept, or is it more so understand like, okay, now my game is shifting more on the mental end to understanding in this coverage here, I got to play this specifically?
Right. I think for me, like you said, I think it's the mental side of things. You know, I've always had a good work ethic in terms of the physical, because that came easy to me, right? Yeah. You know, go in the weight room, go on the field and get extra work in, do the drills, right? But the side that was missing, which has been apparent, you know, on the field, is the mental side, right? Understanding situations. You know, and when I go back and watch film now, I'm like, man, like I could have made a lot more plays in this situation, or, you know, been in a better position in this situation if I just understood what was going on, you know. But it's not something that's new in my life when I think about it, right? Like when I was in school, I was never really a studier, right? And that was something that hurt me, growing up. And this has exposed that to where now I can't run away from it,
Yeah.
So that's really what I've been working on, and it's been very beneficial, and I see how I've grown a lot since this offseason has started.
Absolutely. So let's throw it all the way back, right? So I like to start from the beginning. You were born in Long Island, New York, right? You moved to North Carolina for a brief stint, and then you moved to Dallas eventually, right? Talk about, I know you were younger, but from what you can remember, what was that move like in the shift of going all the way from, the north side to the south side?
Yeah, so like you said, I was born in Long Island, New York, but, as my family and mom like to joke about, we were there for probably like 6 months, and then we moved to North Carolina, and then we were there until I was in like 2nd grade, because we moved to Texas when I was in 2nd grade. So, all my memories from New York and North Carolina are very slim, but, I can say North Carolina at least was a good time. I liked it. But transitioning from like the East Coast and moving to Texas, it was like a whole different ball game, right? Like I really started showing once we moved to Texas that, I really had a passion for football. Because it's not really a thing, in North Carolina and New York. That's basketball around there. So, moving to Texas and seeing what the culture was like it was mind-blowing. People eat, sleep, and breathe football in Texas. Right. So it was really, God's, blessing that we moved to Texas, because who would have known that, at the end of the day, I was going to end up being an NFL player, right?
Right.
So, God worked his way, and, it was a real blessing in disguise. And, I remember my mom talking about that move to Texas, and she just felt like God was speaking to her. You didn't know exactly what it was, but our purpose was in Texas. And, we lived through it, and now we're looking back, it's like, okay, it makes sense.
So you mentioned moving to Texas, and, it's a blessing in disguise. You're in a household with 2 older siblings, both being your sisters.
Right.
So you're the only young boy in the house. What was that like growing up around, just women only? Obviously your dad's in the household, but at a young age, man, it's common for, a young boy to be surrounded by other young boys. You know what I mean? What was that like?
For me, it was difficult. Like you said, growing up, I had mom and sisters in the house, and, my dad was around, but he worked a lot of hours, even though he worked up the street. It was like the only time I really got to see him was like in the morning when it was time to go to school, and late at night when he got in from work. So, I didn't really get to see him too much outside of that or his off days. But, it really taught me how to be a man, at an early age, right? How to care for, a female, how to be responsible. What does manhood really look like? And I really appreciated it in that aspect. But then you had the flip side, like you said, being the only boy that was really there. I leaned a lot on, close friends. One of my best friends lived next door to me. So when I would come home and, my sister was hanging with her friends, I would go hang out with him. And he was, he's a year older than me. And it was almost like having a big brother, right? Yeah. And in his situation, like his father had passed when he was young. So he really had to be the man of his household. And, watching him and how he operated helped me, right? And, I look back, and a lot of times I'm like, man, I wish I had like an actual big brother, right?
Yeah,
like I can go outside and throw the football with.
Right.
But once I really look back at it, I really did,
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for, how everything turned out, and it really made me who I am today.
So you mentioned, growing up, and, you found this guy who you're looking up to in a big brother role. But you mentioned also it taught you a lot about being a man, being around your sisters,
Right.
Your mom in the household. How much of your family support, how much has that shaped you into who you, throughout your childhood and soon to be young adult? How much has that shaped you into knowing that, man, no matter what, my family always got my back?
Yeah, no, that's really been my backbone, It's showing me the importance of family. And just, especially in what I do, it's showing me what's important in life, right? You never want to have your job be who you are and your identity. And And a lot of people ask me, like, what's my passion? What are my hobbies, right? And I realized what truly makes me happy is being around those people, right? Because you don't get to the highest places in life for you without a village, right? So I had to lean on mom, I had to lean on dad, I had to lean on siblings, I had to lean on friends, right? And the value, there's no money that you can put on it, right? No amount of money. So it really, really, like I said before, made me who I am today, and it gave me the fundamentals and foundation of how I want to operate whenever I have kids, right? When I have, a wife and kids, the principles that I'm gonna teach them, like, look, you all each other have, right? We're all we got at the end of the day. So just taking those principles that my parents instilled in us and applying it to my life moving forward is, kind of how I've approached it. And like I said, it's been my backbone.
So you moved to Texas, you start playing football, and you're growing throughout your middle school years and high school years. Yeah. Did you ever see this developing into something to where, like, man, I got a shot at playing at the next level? Or was it kind of just, I'm going to just take it day by day?
Yeah, so, I tell this story a lot. Since I was in 4th grade when I started playing football, I always told myself, like, I'm going to make it to the NFL, right? And I try to balance it because I feel like a lot of, young black men nowadays, especially, like, that's what they think, right? They really believe that that's what they're going to do. But I always had the mindset, like, it's going to work out for me because I'm going to take it day by day, right? I know I'm going to put in the work, right? I know I'm going to do the right things. I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot, getting in trouble off the field, right? I was going to have a process. I've always been a 1 + 1 = 2 type of person, right? Yeah. And it's never that easy. There's external factors, but that was always my mindset. So I had that when I was in 4th grade, right? Some people don't even get that maybe throughout their whole life, but, it comes later on in life. And, I really feel like that's what gave me my edge, right? Just having that mindset since the 4th grade. Then you get to middle school, and there was a period of time where, I lost a little bit of the fun of football, right? We talk about it all the time. Like, I don't even remember playing football in the 8th grade. Wow. You know what I mean? And it really started from when I was in 7th grade. I was still playing running back. I had played running back my whole life. And, I was on the 7th grade team thinking like I was going to be the man on the team. And there was this kid that was, he had got held back a couple years, but he was just more dominant, right? Because he was older than us. So I had to be a backup. It was the first time it was like I wasn't the guy, right? Yeah. And I let that steal my love and passion, right? So then when I get to high school, my freshman year, I played, everything was well. Then I get to my sophomore year, and, I had my chest puffed out a little bit, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I wasn't having fun, right? And my mindset was like, do I even want to play football anymore? Like, do I just want to play basketball? Like, I'm trying to figure things out. I remember telling mom, like, hey, if I play football, it's going to be because my friends are playing football, not because I really want to do something with it. Yeah. And, my grades were suffering. I was, focused on some of the wrong things, whether it was females, just hanging out. And, my coach had wanted me to play up on varsity my sophomore year. And, I had a conversation with mom, and she talked to the coaches and was like, look, he's not mature enough to play on varsity. And I was sick.
Humbling moment.
It was a humbling moment. I was like, what you mean? Like, I got the talent. Like, why would you do that to me, right? When really I was doing it to myself. Yeah. And like you said, it was a wake-up call for me. Being on JV, I had dealt with injuries that year too. And I was like, look, if I'm really going to utilize the abilities that I have and I've always known that I could use, I have to take things serious, right? So started locking in school. Right? Only A's and B's. You know what I'm saying? And it was crazy because at that moment, it was like God was saying, now I can bless you with what, I had for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because that's when I started getting offers, right? So it's just crazy how, God's not going to give you anything that you're not ready for. Right. You know what I mean? That you can't handle. Yeah. So when I look back at my life, that's a perfect example of it, right? Like, yeah, I could have played on varsity, but would I have been able to handle it? What would it have done to me mentally? Would I have been motivated? So that had been my journey up to college.
So you mentioned you started to gain traction with your offers and stuff, and you're going through the recruiting process. This is your first time. You're going on official visits.
Yeah.
They feeding you everything. They showing you the city.
Yeah.
What was your mindset going in the recruiting process of knowing that, man, I have these, a few schools, these numerous schools that want me here, but how were you able to separate which school was best for you?
Right. So for me, location was important. I didn't want to be too far away from home. Like I'm a mama's boy. I'm really close with my family. So going away was like, I'm not sure if I want to do that. But I had like 5 offers coming out of high school. And, I had like UNT, New Mexico, Iowa State, UNLV, I think one other school, UNT. And you know what I mean? Like I took some visits and they were cool, but I felt this pressure of, okay, I need to go ahead and commit. I need to know where I'm going, right? So I committed to Kansas. And when I committed there, I didn't ever feel comfortable with the decision.
Wow.
And I tried to put on the face like, oh, like everything is good. Like I would show up to school with all my Kansas stuff on, and it was like, put on the front like everything was cool, but really it wasn't. And when I came back home and I really wanted to go to Tulsa, right? Like I knew Coach Fletch, my trainer knew him, and it felt at home, but they hadn't offered me yet.
Right.
And I remember he had wanted me to go on a visit up there and do a camp, and I was like, go do a camp, like, you know what I mean? Like, why am I gonna go do that?
Right.
Went up there, I got forced to go up there, basically, you know what I mean, because I was upset. And after I went up there, it was a great experience, I realized, like, okay, like, I'm glad that I didn't shoot myself in the foot by not going up here because I almost let my own attitude get in the way of that.
Wow.
And I almost blocked God's blessing for me, right? So, I'm glad that I could look back and see God's hand in what I was doing. But after that, and I came home, Coach Fletch was like, I'm gonna come get you, and I was like, wow, okay. And he did. He offered me, and I committed, and it was one of the best things that could have happened to me.
Right, and there's this quote, bro. It says, "The man who asks a question is a fool for a minute, but the man who does not ask is a fool for life." So it's a quote that talks about the power of seeking help and wisdom along your path and journey. So you talk about Coach Fletch. He was that navigating mentor that helped you kind of bridge the gap between the high school and college transition.
Right.
So in a way, he kind of was the parent that was away from home, right?
Right.
How important was his mentorship to you and your ultimate development?
It was very important. Like you said, it was like a parent that, was away at school, right? And that was one of the big things of why I decided to go there, right? I feel like football, it was an area for me to show who I am, but it wasn't gonna create the identity of Akayleb Evans, right? And like I said, my household, we grew up on certain principles, and Coach Fletch mirrored those principles. So having him in my life during those 4 years that I was at Tulsa was a true blessing, And when I first got to Tulsa, like I couldn't really understand, the importance of having a coach like that. But after going through it and the day-to-day, to making sure I'm good outside of football, making sure my family is good,
right.
It was so crucial for my life, And I'm so appreciative to have a mentor like that in my life because, I've seen a lot of coaches that really don't care about players, right?
Yeah.
And they just care about, can you pick off the ball? Can you be in position? Can you do this and that for me? With Coach Fletch, it was never that, right? Obviously, he wanted the best for me, but it was bigger than ball. And especially as a black male, like, a lot of times we get in these schools and these situations where it's like, if you're not producing, like, bye, right? Like, we're not worried about you. But whether I was playing well, not playing well, hurt, not hurt, like, he was the same guy, right? He always made sure that my mental was good and that Akayleb would become the best man possible. And I can't thank him enough, even to this day, just being a mentor in my life. So he's had the biggest impact on my life as a coach, you know, and mentor. And, you know, it's done a lot for me.
So you mentioned that trust factor of you being able to trust in, okay, this man has my best interest, right? So saying that, on the opposite end, obviously he trusted you enough. He threw you to the wolves freshman year, where most guys would redshirt, most guys would kind of take that year to kind of get adjusted. Man, you're out there covering Cortland Sutton, who went to be, was it first round, second round to the Denver Broncos?
Yeah.
Talk about that experience of being out there, a true freshman, man, and it's like, man, you got to go.
Dog. So back it up to right before I went up to college, right?
Right.
I remember I was talking to, you know, my parents. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to be a true freshman, right? Like, I'm going to be the big dog on campus. Like, I want all the smoke, right? Yeah. So, you know, I get there and, you know, I still had that mindset. Like, I'm making sure that I'm doing the best that I can, showing, you know, the coaches that, like, I can be trusted, right? So, you know, season rolls around and the first few games, I didn't redshirt, but like I was traveling, and you know it wasn't too bad because I didn't have to play yet. Right. Once that fourth game came around, though, and Coach Fletcher was like, "Okay, I'm gonna put you out there." I'm like, "Oh,
what?"
Like, huh? I'm like, "Okay, like now, like the talk isn't enough. Now I gotta go do it, right?" So you know, I get out there and then I become the starter, right? And I'm like, "Dog, this is a lot." Like, there's so much that you don't really know that you thought that you knew, right? So, you know, dealing with that, then dealing with having to perform in school, right? And, you know, managing time, I'm like, this a lot on my plate. Especially when I'm like, I have my friends, like other freshmen that aren't playing. So, you know, we always talk about, you know, I'll come home from the game and I see you like laying down, chilling, sleep. I'm like, man. Or like we'll get up, have to travel, and you like, all right, bro, I see you. I'm like, dang, like he get to chill, and I just know like I got to go out here and just like really, really perform. And it was very stressful. But if it weren't for that experience, I don't know if I would have made it to the league because it like almost thickened my skin, right? It made me learn certain experiences that I might not have gotten until sophomore or junior year, which might have been too late. I don't know. But it was a really like big wake-up call. Like, look, you can do this, but you're going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to put in the extra. You can't rely just on, oh, I can run fast, I can jump high, right? So, yeah, that was a life-altering experience. And even, you know, I don't know how many people I've told this, but I thought about quitting. Like during freshman year, like halfway through freshman year, I remember we were about to play Navy, and you know, like we were at home too, and I'm halfway to the stadium, and I remember I called Mom. I'm like, "Yo, I don't think I want to play anymore," and she was like, I hear you, but you're just in the middle of it right now, right? Like it's hard to sit down and think about. You're feeling emotions. I'm like, yeah, I hear you, but like I think I'm done. And she was like, look, just finish out the season. And, you know, we'll talk about it in the springtime, see how you're feeling then. And, you know, went through the rest of the season. It was pretty good. And then when I got to the offseason, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it wasn't too bad, right? Like, it wasn't terrible. So it was a huge learning and growth experience for me that I definitely needed.
Yeah, and you stuck with it, bro. And, you know, eventually the success started coming. Like you said, going into your second year, that's when you're like, okay, I got this. Right. I got my experience where most of your peers who redshirted, they didn't have that same experience. Right. So now that you're grounded in, okay, I know I can play on this field. I know that, you know, I'm getting my grades together. You mentioned the fact that you're always the type to want to make an impact wherever you go, right? One thing that I know about you is you've always been a guy who like, man, whatever place that I'm in, wherever I put my hands on, I always want there to be a lasting impact. Right. So when we talk about something, being a part of something bigger than you, the Black Men's Initiative Program, you felt the need to get that chartered on the University of Tulsa's campus. And if y'all don't know, University of Tulsa is a PWI, right? And majority of their minority students are the athletes. So there are many times where we would joke about this all the time. We would walk to class and we didn't see people who looked like us.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And if we did, it's like, they're an athlete. So why was that specific chartering of that program important to you and leaving your mark at Tulsa?
Right. Like you said, we walk around campus. If you see somebody who look like you or us, they're probably an athlete. They're on the football team, they're on the basketball team, or you had about maybe 3-4 students that we all knew that were regular students that were Black. And it was tough to see because, outside of football, where else did we have a space to really connect, right? And feel like have a safe space to be able to talk about certain things, talk about real emotions, real things that's happening in the world, right? Because just the locker room isn't going to do that. So it was very important to me to be able to do that so that not just the athletes, but those other, Black students on campus had a space that they could come, right, talk and see that we're trying to do something that, involves us. Because a lot of people don't know, like, it's hard to go to, a school that's predominantly white. Especially since it's a really small school. So you're seeing the same people every day and they're not going to be able to really relate to us, right? So it was huge. It was a huge moment for not just myself, but I feel like the university because, like I said, it gave us a space to open up. There were really good events and really good conversations that we had during that time that were so meaningful, and it was bigger than what I thought it was going to be, honestly. But the feedback was really good. I think everybody who attended enjoyed it. So I'm glad that I was able to do that.
Yeah, and the last episode I had Gerard on, we were talking about vulnerability, right? And like you said, it created those safe spaces in the safe environments for those conversations to be had. So what were the specific pressures and issues that you were facing on the campus that once you opened up and talked about it with the other Black athletes, you're like, man, I realize I'm no longer the only one going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
Did that open your eyes more?
Yeah, it definitely did because it's easy to feel isolated, right? Like, oh, I'm the only one that's thinking this or feeling this way, so I'm going to keep it to myself because I don't want to look out of whack or out of character. And in reality, that wasn't the case, Honestly, I feel like being on a campus like that and being in that environment, it was kind of like me trying to force people that don't look like me to understand me. And once I realized that they would probably never ever be able to understand me, I was like, wow, like, okay, so who can I really like confide in? In the locker room, everybody's trying to be, macho man, right? Like everybody's just trying to act like they don't have any issues, they don't have anything going on. So when I'm in the locker room, that's how I have to be. But then outside the locker room, what do I do? Because then it's like I don't want to just talk to my teammates because they might run and go, tell somebody like, oh, like, Caleb talking about this, and I'm like, you don't want that. So that was that space for me to open up and be like, look, this is where I'm at. This is my experience. How are y'all? Like, how is yours, right? And realizing that I'm not the only one really was like, okay, I can be vulnerable, right? It's okay. It's all right. Especially as a Black male, like, you feel like you have to wear a cape all the time. And I realized really fast that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Matthew 7:13-14, it says, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter it. For the gate that is small and way is narrow leads to life, and there are few who find it. So in society, we talk about a lot of people feeling the need to fit into a certain mode of who they have to be portrayed to be, right? And society pressures us into putting us in a category. Like you said, you're a Black student athlete, so that's what you do. So kind of talk about the importance of not following the crowd and embracing your uniqueness into who you truly are.
Yeah. That's really what I feel like I've been able to stand on, right? And it really developed through athletics. A lot of times as an athlete, or just in general, you want to be cool with everybody. You want to go hang out. You want to go to the cool parties. You want to hang out with the females, right? You know, start doing drugs, all that, just to be the cool kid. But I realized early that wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to be. So I had to be different, right? But through that, I understood that wasn't just football. Like, that's in life.
Right,
like,
right.
I don't have to, you know, conform to what everybody else is doing to fit in. And, you know, I realized that it's not that easy for everybody, you know? Because I used to look at people and be like, well, why don't you just do the same thing, right? But maybe some people just don't have that same it factor in them already to be able to say, like, no, I'm not going to go do this. They just need some guidance. And, you know, the value of that is so huge. You can't even explain it, because it's like, if I conform to everybody else and what they're doing, like, there's just no way that I can do anything different. And we get one opportunity, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So why not be different? You know, I don't ask why. I ask why not. That's how I approach things, because there's so much that we can do on this earth that, you know, I just don't want to limit myself to fit the mold of everybody else, you know? So if I, you know, expand in my train of thought of what can Akayleb Evans be, I can't follow everybody else. I got to explore. I got to go figure out, like, okay, where do I best fit in this world, and what's the best version of Akayleb?
I like that, bro. So you're cultivating your friend circle. Mm-hmm. You're chartering this program. Yep. So things are kind of moving, you know? You're doing good on the field and stuff. But then there's a moment while you're trending up to where there's a moment where everything just changes in the snap of a button. So you're playing against Oklahoma State, and you have this injury, this shoulder injury. What was going through your mind initially when it happened? Right.
So going into junior year, because that was junior year, you know, I was having conversations with, you know, mom, like, well, if I have a really good year, I might just come out early. So, you know, that was my thought process, like, ball out, leave early, that's that. So, like you said, third game, and, you know, I dislocate my shoulder. It pops out. I come off to the sideline, and my first thought is just, wow, I'm in pain, right?
Right.
But after a little bit and it started slowing down, I'm like, wow, like, I'm really going to have to get surgery on this, and I'm done for the season. So it was like a reality moment, like, wow, I'm not invincible. You know what I mean? Like, this game can be taken from me at any moment. And I really, really needed that, because it's easy to feel like, oh, like, nothing bad's going to happen to me. Like, everything's going to work out. Like, everything has in the past, so why would it be any different? And at that moment, it was the first time I didn't have control. And once I realized I didn't have control in that situation, I was like, I just have to be able to submit to the process and God, you know, and leaning on friends and family, because if not, like, you start to spiral, you know. And a lot of that time I was, you know, isolated, especially early on. Like, I'm not going to practice anymore. I'm not around my friends as much. My family's, you know, 3 hours away. But I feel like my circle of people and friends were very intentional about making sure that I was good, right? And including, like, Coach Fletch, like you, my family would come up there and make sure I'm good, calling me every day. And I needed that, because at that time, my identity was just football, you know? So I felt like I had lost my identity. I didn't know who Akayleb Evans was, you know? And it was very hard. But once again, it was a moment that I feel like God placed me in that position so I could learn those lessons at that time, right? Because what if I didn't get hurt? Is it another situation where I'm really not ready for that next step, just like high school? So it's like at each level, it was like it started mirroring, okay, like, this is what God's trying to show me in this moment, right? Don't get down on yourself. Look at it and flip it into the positive, you know? Like, what is he trying to show me? What is he trying to get me to learn in this situation? And, you know, in the moment, it was really tough, but I really needed it, you know, in the big scheme of things.
That's good, man. And when we have dreams and aspirations, lots of time we try to think that we control them. Mm-hmm. Like you said, There's a quote that says, God doesn't lift you up to be where you want to be for you to leave him out. And when you get there, when you obtain the thing, like you said, you had the humbling moment to know that, man, this could be taken away in a heartbeat.
Right.
Does that make you cherish everything more?
Yeah, definitely, because like you said, at snap of a finger, like it could be done, and I saw that in my own experience, but now being in the league, I've seen other players, older vets that have talked to me and given me wisdom, like, look, I done seen this situation with this guy. He's been all the way up here, and then something happened and they lead a game and they're depressed, right? So you really have to cherish the process. I've always had an issue of, looking forward. And it wasn't until, getting ready for, the NFL, I look back like, wow, like I was in such a rush that I didn't even enjoy the process, And, once you start getting certain things, you start to realize like that's the real value. That's the real, happiness, looking back at the times that we had at Tulsa, you know what I mean? Or the time that I had at Missouri when I was there. That's the true happiness. That's what fulfilled me. So I have to cherish every moment, even when things feel horrible. There's always somebody out there that's in a worse position. So, I have to understand the blessing and cherish it.
We're in the day of the transfer portal to where you're seeing a lot of kids, they're hopping in the portal and going to different schools, whether that be for NIL, whatever reasons, right? You kind of got a taste of that once you did your 4 years at Tulsa and you entered the transfer portal. Yep. What was your mindset? Did you kind of already know, okay, this is what I'm looking for if I do transfer? What was your mindset and approach? Because this is a place that you're leaving behind your friends, people that you've grown so close, Coach Fletcher, those foundations and stuff. Was it kind of scary in the initial process?
Yeah, it definitely was because, like I said, when I was a junior, like I was thinking, okay, this is the year I'm going to come out and go to the NFL. So, once it was time for me to leave Tulsa, it was really, really tough. And a lot of people don't know that because I don't speak on it too much. But, like you said, these are the people who are, my core group of friends, like lifelong friends. You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking once I'm done here, like it's the NFL. There's no other in between. But I had already graduated, so I had my degree. And at that moment, I felt okay with moving forward and going on to a different school. And just because of where I was at that time, right? I had played well at Tulsa, but I feel like I had done all I could there, right? And I had to be like, okay, it's okay. I'm doing it to further my career, but that doesn't mean I have any bad blood with Tulsa, right? So like you said, hopping in the portal, yeah, it's nerve-wracking. You just don't know what's going to happen, right? But once I started getting offers and, seeing different schools, I'm like, wow, okay, like this is, this is the moment that I was looking for back when I was in high school, when I wanted every school to show me love. You know what I mean? And I didn't get that. Yeah. But, it's God's timing, right? Once again, like he wasn't going to give me something back when I was in high school that I just wasn't ready for yet.
Right.
So, it was a full circle moment. And then, the decision to go to Missouri, I won't say it was an easy decision because even when I was in the portal, I was like, do I really want to leave Tulsa? Like, do I really want to leave my friends? And once I finally decided, like, yes, like I'm officially going to leave, like, I remember I broke down. Like, I was by myself. I was with I broke down because I'm like, wow, like it's never going to be the same again. But making that decision to go to Missouri, Coach Fletcher had left us and he ended up going to Missouri. So that made that decision easier. So it all worked out, but, it was definitely tough, but it made my skin thicker.
Absolutely. So you go to Missouri, you have a great year. Now it's game time. You enter the draft, right?
Yeah.
And, what that process looked like as far as the discipline of training, you're finding agents, things like that. Leading up to draft day, was there a specific time that you're thinking like, man, again, it's out of my hands, right?
Wow.
Was there anything going through your mind of this can either turn out one way or another? Or did you kind of have an idea of, okay, this team is kind of liking me more, this is where I think I'm going to go.
Yeah, so during the process, you try to guess, like, okay, where am I going to go, right? Because now you're talking about you're going to be somewhere that you maybe never have been to before. You know what I mean? Like, you have to pick up your life and move it here and then start playing football, right? So that's nerve-wracking within itself. But, you know, after a while, I was like up all night, like thinking like, okay, let me see what this blog is talking about. Let me see what this, you know, team talking about. You know, who did they interview? And, you know, you try to narrow down and break it down and figure out, okay, this is probably where I'm going to go. And there were teams that I really thought like, okay, they're going to draft me probably in this position right here. And, you know, it's a very stressful process, and I put a lot more of that on myself, just overthinking things. But how do you not, right? Like, this is your lifelong dream. So, you know, that process was tough because all I could do was, you know, work out, especially after the combine. You've done all you can do. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's really out of my control at that point. So, you know, just stay grounded in that time was very important. We would always go hang out and make sure that I wasn't spending time just on the phone looking up stuff. We go do fun things, family things, to make sure that my mental was good. And then, you know, once I got to the draft, like I said, I'm like, oh, I just know I'm going here. I just know I'm going to this place. And getting drafted by the Vikings, it was like, well, I didn't even talk to them, I don't think. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't even remember, like, having a real conversation with the team. And it was just a reminder that, like, you know, you can't stress about the things on earth. Like, God has a plan, you know? And it didn't matter how much time I sat there and thought about it, tried to figure it out. He had the roadmap,
right? You
know? Like, and then at that moment, I had to look back at my whole career. Now, if you would ask me when I was in 4th grade, like, how is this going to play out for you? It would have looked completely different.
Right.
It would have looked completely different.
That alludes to this scripture, Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, not some of your heart, all of your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Yep. I think the weight of that scripture is something that we take lightly as a society. Yeah. What I mean by all of your ways is there's some things that we're like, all right, God, you can have this, right? But I'm gonna hold on to this. Yeah. Like, nah, maybe you can have your hand in it a little bit. Yeah. But like you said, it's like, God, I've done all I can do. Yep. I've did all the works. Now it just requires faith. Right. So when you transition into the NFL, you're getting these things as far as the attention. You're getting, you know, everything you desired in this career. How has being in the NFL shifted your perspective on life? Man. There's so many aspects to this, but, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is I'll talk about the materialistic things. You know, a lot of people think, oh, once I get this, I'll be happy. Once I had this amount of money, I'll be happy. Once I buy this car, I'll be happy. And really fast, really quickly, I saw and understood that wasn't the case, right? I got the car that I wanted. I'm like, okay, boom, like now I'm gonna be happy forever, right? After a few weeks, it's like, I mean, okay, like, yeah, I got it, but now what, you know? And then you start buying things, and it's like, everything might give me happiness for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not giving me fulfillment, right? So then you're like, okay, so what is it that really makes me happy, you know? And that forced me to dig deep within myself, like, and God, like, okay, what is it? And in reality, it was what I truly knew all along, which was family and friends, you know, spending time with them, making sure that they're good, like, right? Because football can leave at any moment, but my family and friends, you know, that I have will never leave, right? So, and they care about Akayleb the person, not just, can I catch the ball? Can I, you know what I mean, get an interception, this, that, and the other. So, you know, that was a huge, you know, realization for me during the process. And just, you know, that aspect, and then you have the aspect of, you know, the fans. Everybody wants to be recognized, right? Everybody wants to be that guy, right? And quickly I learned, you know, they'll cheer for you today and then boo you by tonight. You know what I mean? And I saw myself living for them, right? Trying to make them happy, trying to make sure that I please them. And, you know, I realized very quick, like, you're not going to be able to please everybody. You have to do this for you.
right? And, I heard, one time it said, live for the cheers, die by the booze, right? And I finally understand that. I can't let my happiness and well-being be based off of how a fan or fans feel about me, you know? So those were the two biggest things that I feel like I've seen in being in the NFL for a few years now, and seeing like, okay, the reality of everything.
There's a Nipsey Hussle quote. Nipsey Hussle, that's my guy. All right. He said, would you rather be at peace with the world and at war with yourself, or at peace with yourself and at war with the world? So you allude to gravitating towards your family, being grounded in, okay, I need to take care of my mental health.
Right.
So just a little data. The National Institute of Mental Health states that approximately 1 in 4 adults in the U.S. live with a mental illness. Women are nearly twice as likely to suffer from major depression than men. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in adolescents and adults ages 15 through 24.
Wow.
Approximately 18% of people ages 18 through 54 in a given year have an anxiety disorder. How has valuing your mental health and understanding its importance shaped your life, not only on the field, but off the field?
Yeah, it's been huge. So after, my rookie year, I know I was dealing with a lot mentally, because I had played and I dealt with injuries, concussions, and I had missed a good amount of time. And, it was tough. Like, this is my first opportunity to play, in the NFL where I've always dreamed of playing, and, this is how it's going. And, prioritizing the mental health, I realized, like, it's not just a facade. Like, it's real, like, it's okay to have those issues and talk about them and, talk to somebody about it, because, like, once again, as black men, especially being in the NFL and being in that space, you feel like I got to be Superman, right? I got to be a superhero. And, I realized, okay, once again, it's okay to be vulnerable. Like, anybody who has value to your life won't look at you any different, So once I was able to accept that, I was able to take that and take it off the field, right? Like, I can confide in you. I can confide in my mom. I can confide in my girlfriend, right? I can confide in my siblings. So it made it okay, Like, I don't have to go through life and feel like, I'm dealing with this issue. Like, I'm just going to keep it to myself. Like, no, like, Let's talk about it, right? Let's break down. What's the root of this, And it's helped me grow so much as a person, as a man, right? I remember we always used to kind of joke about, like, oh, will we ever really grow up? You know what I mean? Like, is it ever really going to happen? And since I got to the league to now, like, I've grown so much. Like, I have to sit back every once in a while. I'm like, dang, like, I'm really adulting. Like, I'm looking at stuff different. But that's because I was like, okay, I'm okay with being vulnerable and letting people see things that might not be strengths of mine, Like, I might have weak areas in my life. Like, I can't do it all. And I had to come to grips with that. Like, you know what, Akayleb, you just don't have to be perfect. So that's helped me on and off the field, just with, the mental health side of things. And I'm so grateful that I got to that point.
Absolutely. And we talk about when you're going through the process of change, when you're going through specific, let's just say, uncomfortable situation to where it forces you to mature and grow up. You can get caught in this dilemma that I have to put on this certain front. I have to basically, like you said, be Superman in a way. When in reality, a lot of times the more that we step back and actually look at life that it's bigger than us, that's when we develop that perspective. That's when we develop the perception of everything that you've done along your journey, whether it was making the NFL, whether it was, achieving your goals, whatever it is, this was never just about you.
Right.
And the more people that you've brought with you and realize that it's allowed you to enjoy that success ultimately. So when we talk about timing, we talk about the process. So we know that everyone's timing is different.
Yeah.
And there's a quote that says, don't compare your seed to someone's tree. A lot of times when we get on this journey of life, when we get on the journey of when God speaks a word into us and we go to pursue a specific thing, we tend to look at what everyone else has going on.
Right.
So knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self about trusting in the process?
Like you said, when you compare yourself to others, that leads to doubt. I feel like it leads to depression, because you start to feel like, well, I'm not where they're at, so maybe I'll never get to where I want to be. And being a kid who was never highly recruited or like never really sought after like that, I dealt with some of that. Like growing up, I wanted to go to OU. You know what I mean? When I played football, and when I saw kids that played the same position that I trained with, like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, he got that offer, and I'm in the shadow. It's kind of like, dang, like I'm comparing myself to him. Like, why am I not at his place? Why am I not this? Why am I not that? And then you start to doubt yourself and you get down on yourself, right? But, once you remind yourself, like, I can do all things, like, it don't matter what situation I'm in, right? Like, I'm a conqueror, right? So having that mindset helped me push past that. But, it can be a really, really hard thing to do when you compare yourself to other people, and no matter what it is, just in life, because what I learned through my journey, what I taught myself, is that everybody's path is different. Not everybody got to the NFL the same way. You know what I mean? Some people go 3 years, some people go 5. Some people go D2, some people go to D1, go to Alabama, right? And at the end of the day, we all got to the same point, right? So once I realized that, I can apply the same thing to life. You know what I mean? I might not be where the next person's at, or the next person might not be where I'm at, but that doesn't mean you can write them off, right? You know what I mean? You have to, trust the process. Everybody's going to look different, right? So I've been able to just utilize those lessons in life.
When you talk about your identity off the field, you started your foundation, right? Giving back to your local community. Why was that so important to you to give back to the town that once, developed you in that way? Yeah.
Well, it really started, with conversations with my mom. We just always talked about it's never too early to give it back. Because a lot of people's mindset is, I have to be rich. I have to have a lot of money to be able to give back, right? Or be able to make an impact. And, my parents taught me early, like, that's not the case. You can make an impact just by showing up to stuff, giving your time, right? That's the most valuable thing that we have. So we started out when I was a senior in high school, right? And we started off small. I kept giving, right? Kept giving time, kept giving whatever money I had. God was going to bless it down the road, right? So then when I do have it, you know what I mean? He can bless me with that because now he knows he can trust me with whatever it is that he has for me. So, it was really baby steps, right? And then, like you said, giving back to, where I came from was huge because, growing up in McKinney, it was like not a lot of people were coming out of McKinney, right? And I saw a lot of, kids that were talented or could have been as talented as me, just not get a certain opportunity because their home situation was different, right? I have really great parents, but that's just not everybody's case. And once I realized that, I'm like, okay, I can't take my experience and put that on somebody else as if, oh, well, they didn't make it or they're just not doing what they're supposed to do because that's what they want to do, right? Everybody's environment and stuff is different. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, what can I do to give back to them to help their situation better, right? So that was my mindset, and I grew into that mindset. I didn't just start off with that, right? Like, I had my parents teach me the value of, giving back, what that really means, not just for myself, but for the other person.
Right. There's a scripture, Jeremiah 1:5. It's one of my favorite all-time scriptures. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I'm going to cut it off right there. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And when we get into thinking that our mistakes or the things that we may have done that's against, God's will along our journey, we start to think that, oh man, God's just waiting to punish me. At least that's what I thought. When I first got saved by Jesus, man, I used to think like, man, I'm so scared to mess up that I'm not actually living forth of what God called me to do, you know? But in reality, knowing that, man, God ordained our steps long before we were even alive, you know?
Right.
So I'll ask you this question. Aside from football, let's take off the helmet, let's take off the shoulder pads. Who do you want people to know who Akayleb Evans is?
I want people to know Akayleb Evans as a great man, right? Being a great son, being a great brother, being a great boyfriend, husband, right? Because at the end of the day, I realized, and what really Coach Fletch taught me this, like, people are going to remember how you make them feel, maybe not exactly what you do, right? So I can control that. You know what I mean? I can make sure that I have an impact on people's life, right? Because that's what we're here for. You know what I mean? My impact isn't just go on the field and make people happy and you make plays. Like, that's one thing, but how do I really, truly impact you? You know? And through that, like, once I saw that and understood that, I was like, what is my purpose outside of actually playing the game, right? So then it's like, whenever the ball goes flat, what am I going to do, right? So getting into 7-on-7 and, you know, how can I impact the kids behind me? And I feel like that's going to be my next avenue because, you know, that can impact a lot of people. Just like I was talking about, these kids might be the same kids that I was looking at when I was in school. Like, oh, they just need the right opportunity, right? They just need the right leadership. They just need the right example. So why not be that for them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lastly, I want to wrap up the show, man. It's something that I always try to do with the guests that come on. You know, I first want to start off by giving you your flowers, bro. Let's put the NFL aside, because when I look at you, bro, as a friend, as more than a friend, as a brother, bro, I don't even see the Vikings logo, right? And there's times, man, where I can remember we'll be in our dorm room just chilling, talking in the dark, bro, about this, about that. And I appreciate your presence around me, and I'm blessed that God placed you in my life because you're a person that I've always been able to just be my true self around. And that's rare to find in society nowadays. Whether there was times where we'll have workouts and I'm coming back to the crib, I'm seeing you walking with a backpack. Hey, bro, you going to class? No, I'm going to the field. What? Bro, my knees are screaming, bro. And but bro, like, that kind of forced me to be like, you know what, Devin? You could give a little extra, you know? And I think that's important. Let's just put athletics aside. It's important to have people around you that push you, man. But going back to it, man, I appreciate you just as an individual, as a human being. I appreciate your openness. I appreciate your authenticness, whatever it is. And, man, I just appreciate your family, the way they've embraced me. Try not to get emotional, man. I must say embrace me, man. And they've always treated me as one of theirs, you know? And I want to truly say, man, like, it weighs on my heart a lot of times because I always wanted a younger brother. You know what I mean? And when I met you, bro, I kind of always felt this duty to protect you in a way, you know? And whether we was on the field training or not, bro, just like being around you, it always reminded me of my home away from home. I didn't have, you know, the best situation growing up, but I've always gravitated towards that brotherhood, man. And I just thank you, man, because there was times, man, where I wanted to quit. I wanted to, you know, just give up, man, but you inspired me to keep me going. And your family, man, the open arms that they surrounded me with, I just appreciate it, man. I just want to say thank you. Man,
nah, that means a lot. And, you know, like you said, like when I got to college, you know, having that young mindset, right? I'm get there and, you know, you just don't know what you don't know. But, you know, when we were roommates and we first started off, I'm like, okay, let me figure out who this guy is for real, right? And you were always a model of, you were always mature. You know what I mean? You were always the mature one. You know, you had a good head on your shoulders. You know what I mean? You were grounded. And I'm like, we talk about the comparison. I'm like, man, like, I feel like I got to hide in the shell sometimes because it's like, I can't be like Devin. But then once I realized, like, you didn't just wake up one day, right, and just become that. Like, it was a process, you know? And that's why I respect you so much. You know what I mean? And I love our brotherhood because it's like you always stay true to yourself, you know? And, you know, once again, it's talking about being vulnerable. There's so much that I learned from you. You know what I mean? How to be a good man. Like you said, like you were like a big brother. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're showing me without even having to say much, right? Of how to move in life, how to navigate through situations, you know, how not to lean on emotions and lean on God, right? And, you know, all my other friends, like, we have great relationship, but it's always been different, like you said, right? Because we've been able to lean on each other, right? Like, we went through experiences at Tulsa that was like, some people just never gonna understand, right? Yeah. But where I was always going to the field, you was always getting in your Bible, right? And I might not have said the most about it, but I'm looking over like, wow, you know what I mean? Let me learn from this. How can I apply this, right? And, you know, this is great that we're having this conversation because, you know, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Like, I've been on we have a great relationship. It's a great brotherhood. But hearing what I've meant to you, I hope you can hear what you've meant to me. You know what I mean? Because you've always been the role model of, okay, at the end of the day, if I can end up how Devin is and how he moves, I know I'm in a good place, right? So you really been a model for me and how to move through life, right? I know Akayleb's best version is going to look like what Devin is, right? So I appreciate you and everything, bro. Like you said, it's a real brotherhood, like real brotherhood, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I appreciate you more than, you know, I can explain right now because it's been life-changing. You know, you don't meet too many people, like you said, in this world that you can have those type of bonds with. But once you realize the true value of it, you never let it go. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, bro. It's an honor. I want to end this off with prayer. If you guys can bow your head, whoever's listening to the sound of my voice, I just feel this really heavy on my spirit today. There's somebody out there that's looking for a way back home, right? There's somebody out there who's been trying to just think that they have control of their life. They've been trying to do it on their own, and they're just ready to say, I surrender. So, Lord, this prayer is for anybody out there that under the sound of my voice, Lord. I just ask that you draw them back into you. God, you are a good God. You're a God of forgiveness, Lord. You're not a God of anything that causes shame, Lord. I thank you, Lord, just for having us in this environment, allowing us to be in this moment, glorifying you through every word that we speak. Lord, I thank you so much that you are who you are. If there's not anything else, just help us to understand who you are, Lord. I ask that anybody listening to the sound of my voice, Lord, that you draw them in, Lord, that you protect them, that you let them know there's a new light at the end of the tunnel. Lord, I thank you so much for our friends, our family, our support system. I thank you for just the podcast studio, allowing the people in the back recording. Lord, anybody that is listening to this, I thank you that they're protected by your ultimate hand. Lord, I ask that as we go along our further days, Lord, that we continue to honor you, that we continue to hold on to the faith of your Son, Jesus Christ. Lord, I thank you that you give us eternity. You give us life, Lord. You give us life, and you remove death from anything, Lord, that the enemy tries to send our way. I just ask, Lord, that you keep us, you protect us, Lord, and you allow us to just rejoice in your goodness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Turn on the lamp. I don't go postal till God give his stamp. We going global. I'm in with the champs. I said the oval. They told me I can't. I'm feeling like Oprah, cause you get a chance and you get a chance. Tell us.